watched carefully a relationship that had grown up between her son and a girl on the station, Daringa, who was, Misa guessed, about 16. Until a few months ago, Tolo, when not at his lessons under his tutor, had spent his time with the Aboriginal boys practicing the native art of killing birds and rabbits with accurately thrown rocks or with the boomerang. But now Daringa occupied his attention. It had been her brightness and curiosity that started their relationship. Daringa had asked Tolo what magic was held by a book that he was reading, and he had tried to explain, then had ended up by beginning the process of teaching her how to read. When she showed aptitude for the lessons, Tolo had asked his mother for help, and thus Misa, too, developed a special interest in the bright young girl who was so eager to please. Daringa's father was an intelligent man named Colby, a valued and expert worker whom John had made his head stockman. Colby was, however, a product of the old traditions, and his looks were dark and threatening whenever he saw his daughter reading from one of the white man's books. He had told Misa that he did not know what spirits were contained in the book, but he knew that they could not be of the land, because they had been brought in by the white man to this ancient place the white man had renamed Australia. "You must not be so old-fashioned, Colby," Misa had replied. "But why does she read the white man's book?" Colby had persisted. "She will never be white." For that Misa had no answer. Indeed, the question had forced her to look back to her own trials since first arriving in Australia. It had not taken long after John had brought her from Samoa for Misa to realise that her initial fears about marrying into white Australian society had not been groundless. John and she had discussed the European settlers' attitude that Australia was for people with white skin only, and he had assured her that he would allow no one to insult her. He had been true to his word. No man, no woman dared insult Misa, to her face at least. John Mason was one of Victoria's richest men, and consequently one of the state's most powerful citizens. Ironically, most of his wealth had come from his stepfather, Marcus Fisher, whom he had despised so much that he had changed his name to that of his maternal grandfather. Fisher had perished in Samoa during a great hurricane in 1889, shortly before John's marriage to Misa. That John and Misa had married at all was an act of a loving God. Years earlier, Misa had been one of many Polynesians, known as Kunakus, who were indentured workers in the Queensland cane fields, lured there under false pretenses by white Australians. She had given herself to John in exchange for his help in liberating her people and setting them on their homeward journey to Samoa. Out of that union had come Tolo. It was only much later, shortly after the hurricane, that John found Misa again and was introduced to his son for the first time. When John and Misa returned to Australia from their honeymoon voyage, accompanied of course by Tolo, they learned that Marcus Fisher's body had been recovered on Apia and legally identified. By law, all of Fisher's vast holdings now belonged to the stepson, whom Fisher had formally adopted when John was a boy. The properties included a fine manor outside Melbourne, a townhouse and business property in the city, including a shipping company, cattle and sheep stations in both Victoria and New South Wales, and sugarcane plantations in Queensland. John at first wanted nothing to do with Fisher's wealth. The man had so mistreated his mother Caroline while she was alive that she had been driven to drink and nearly to madness. "Misa," he declared when he received the list of Fisher's holdings, "I don't want that man's money or properties. I've been doing all right with my own trading activities. We're by no means rich, but I'll be able to provide for you and Tolo very well on my own, thank you." Misa, however, had tactfully pointed out that John had inherited not only riches but obligations. "Don't they still use indentured kunakus on those sugarcane plantations?" she asked. "I wonder if there are men with whips driving them to work harder. As owner, John, you could see that the kunakus are treated fairly, along with the Aboriginal stockmen who are on the stations." John, who had quickly come to respect his bride's surprisingly practical mind, listened attentively. "Consider this too," Misa went on. "Tolo, who is half Samoan, will one day be alone in this country. I think that he will find less prejudice if he is very rich, don't you agree?"